A lot of people see difficult conversations as something to avoid. We want to avoid it at all costs, but sadly, it just makes it worse because then not only is it prolonged and the issue isn't solved sooner, but also you get to be all stressed throughout that time when you're not having that conversation. Something that I used to do a lot as a recovering people pleaser, but it's something that I've realized the sooner I can do it, the sooner I can rip that band-aid off, the sooner we can both move forward. In this video, we're going to talk about a mindset shift for approaching those difficult conversations, and we're also going to look at what your conflict style is, because understanding what your conflict style is will really help you navigate those conversations and make sure that you're not being triggered by things as well. I highly suggest that you write down, either grab a pen and paper or type it out if you prefer. And I'm curious to know, when was the last time that you avoided a difficult conversation? And then once you write that out, I'd love you to write, why did it feel risky? So pause this video right here. If you said something along the lines, I was worried it would upset them, I was worried it would affect my job, I was worried it would affect my relationship, you are not alone. That's a huge reason why lots of people put off those conversations, and we all have our personal reasons for why we want to avoid those things. But let's look at a mindset shift that I find really helpful. These are sort of the main things that I like to think about when I realize I have to have a challenging conversation. See conflict as an opportunity and not a confrontation. When you see it as a chance for you two to get on the same page, for you two to understand each other more, then this is an opportunity instead of a confrontation, instead of us arguing or battling it out. Try to see that conflict isn't the enemy. It's just information. It's just you guys don't have all of the information that the other one does. So you need to try to trade that information to understand each other, to see where each other are coming from. And let's say you see that someone's getting emotional. Those emotions are signals. They're not threats. If someone's getting emotional, take a pause and think, okay, this is triggering them in some way. Let's dive into this and figure out how we can make sure that they don't have that negative emotion towards this. And that goes for yourself as well. When you recognize your own triggers, then you're more easily able to take a step back and think about, oh my gosh, I'm getting a little hot under the collar here. Why is that? What about this situation is making me feel this way? And we're going to dig more into the triggers coming up soon. But my favorite thing, if you remember nothing else, write this on a post-it, reframe it not as confrontation, but as collaboration. We are coming together to try to figure this out. Again, whether it's at work and it's you and another department head, or whether it's you and your spouse, it's you coming together to try to figure out how we can make this work. Right now, it's not working. How can we collaborate together to figure out something that works for us both? But let's dive into conflict a little bit more and have a bit more of an understanding about exactly what is conflict. I always love a bit of a textbook definition. Conflict isn't just a disagreement. It's typically what happens when your needs or values or expectations collide with someone else and they don't match up in some way, or they aren't understood by the other. And because of that, one or both of you end up feeling emotionally threatened. Now, when this happens, our emotional brain, specifically the amygdala, it takes over, and it's called an amygdala hijack. This was a term that was coined by the psychologist Daniel Goleman. And it's just the body's built-in alarm system. It's sensing a threat, so it's sending this up. When it sees danger, whether it's social, emotional, or physical, like it would have been when a saber-toothed tiger was running after us, it floods us with that stress hormone, and that stops us from being able to logically think about things. And the brain can see so many different things as danger. It could be things like criticism, rejection, loss of control. There are so many things that our brain could be like, oh God, danger, and flood that amygdala. And this is why in conflict we might do things like react instead of respond, interrupt or withdraw from a situation. We might take things personally or get really defensive. We might feel our heart race or our face flush. I know that's for me. My face flushes all the time. It always gives me away, so people can always tell when I'm being emotionally triggered. And underneath of all of those reactions are something that's triggering us, something that's making us feel disrespected or unseen or not valued. And these triggers are different for everybody because generally they're attached to things that have happened in your past. But when we learn to recognize those triggers, both in ourselves and in others, we're able to stop that hijack. And then with the right tools, we're able to have that difficult conversation become just a great growth opportunity and a place where we can get deeper understanding of ourselves and other people. With that in mind, let's dig into what your conflict style is. So these are the conflict styles, the 5 conflict styles, and they're outlined by the Thomas Kilmann Conflict Mode Instrument, TKI. As I go through these, I want you to think about which one you do. And it can be different in your personal life versus your professional life, so keep that in mind as well. The first one is avoiding conflict What conflict? You just put it off and delay it as much as is humanly possible. This is certainly what I used to do before I realized that it was just doing more damage to me and my relationships. The second one is accommodating. So you go along to get along. You prioritize keeping the peace above your own needs no matter what. Then the third one is competing. So that's when you're putting in your thoughts very strongly and very aggressively and assertively. And this one often tends to be at other people's expense. It tends to be a reaction where you're just thinking about what your priorities are. The fourth one is compromising. So you try to meet in the middle, try to have some fair trade-offs. No one's really happy, but no one's really unhappy about it. It's this kind of middle place. And then the fifth one is collaborating. And this is where you and the other person are trying to find a win-win, something where we will both be happy. All right, now that you know the 5 different styles, I'd love you to reflect on these questions. So you can, of course, reverse the video a bit to see those 5 again, or check out your PDF and see them there. But these are the questions I'd love you to think about. So feel free to pause the video after I read these out. Which conflict style do you think is your usual style? And I'm curious to know what made you think that that's your style. What about the way you interact makes you feel that way? And do you feel like there are certain things that have influenced that? Was it the way you were raised, the culture that you're in, other things in life? Then I'd love you to consider, how do you deal with these difficult conversations at home versus professionally? Are you different? Do you use a different conflict style depending on where you are or who you're talking to? And then what's worked well in the past? Think about a conversation that you thought was going to be difficult but went so much better than you had expected. What happened there? What do you think you did to make that conversation go well, or what did the other person do? And then think about the opposite as well. When is there a conversation that you had and maybe you thought it'd be difficult, maybe you didn't, but it just completely backfired. It went completely wrong. Write down what happened and think about how you might have approached it differently if you had different tools or time to prepare or knew what you knew now. So feel free to pause this now. All right, now that we understand what our conflict style or styles are, and we have some ideas on our mindset shifts, let's move on to the next video. And in that one, we're going to talk about recognizing our triggers and triggers in others and how to de-escalate.